Welcome. The topic for today is proper sorting of foods on Shabbos. How can we sort foods properly? Some of the great halachic leaders of the past few generations have mentioned the importance of being versatile in the halachas of Shabbos. In order for a person properly to protect against doing anything prohibited on Shabbos, a person must know the halachas. And they say that if a person does not know clearly the halachas, it's almost certain that almost each and every Shabbos you can come to transgression, chas v'shalom. This is especially true in regard to the activity of boirer. We learned that boirer is one of the 39 prohibited acts. And what boirer means is sorting food in a way that's not permissible. We learned already that the way that's not permissible to sort food on Shabbos is to take away debris, take away what you don't want from good food. That would be considered a prohibited act on Shabbos. And we went over some of the parameters of what is really considered a prohibited act on Shabbos in terms of sorting food. What we wanted to do today is go over certain practical ways that a person can totally avoid this issue, which is so necessary, because a lot of times it's just one little change, as we'll see, just one little difference of approach in action that can make all the difference between a prohibited act and a permissible act. Before we start, I'll just mention parenthetically that a lot of people have this question: does God really care if it's exact or it's not so exact? If I pull the food this way or I pull the food this way, why should it make much of a difference? And the answer is, when a person goes for surgery, the surgeon has to be very precise. Does it make a difference if he places his surgical knife a few millimeters to the right or a few millimeters to the left? Yes, certainly. Because he's engaged in a very precise science. When we do the laws that God has given us in the Torah, we are actually bringing holiness and life-giving force to the world. We're engaged in very precise activities. And so therefore, that little difference of whether I pull away the food from the bones or pull away the bones from the food makes a tremendous difference. And that's what we wanted to learn today. What are some things, very simple rules or practices that a person could do to totally avoid any problem of getting into the issue of sorting food in a prohibited manner on Shabbos? So we learned last time a sign that a person can remember in what way is sorting food prohibited. I ask from Hashem when I pray, please give me, I want an immediate hand. Give me a hand, give me a hand. I want an immediate hand. That short sentence really includes all three rules. I want means I need to take away what I want from what I don't want. Immediate means it needs to be done immediately prior to eating. And hand means it has to be done either with a person's hand or an extension of the hand. It can't be done with any specific utensil for separation. So, once again, I want an immediate hand. That's the way to separate food properly on Shabbos that should not be considered a prohibited act. But here's the thing. There are certain circumstances that will not make it prohibited at all. And that's what we wanted to go over today. First, even before a person comes to judge whether they have to be careful right now, they're in the middle of preparations in the kitchen, they're getting ready for the meal. Do I have to be worried about separating food or not? The first rule is that separating food can only become prohibited if it takes place with a mixture. There has to be something mixed together for me to separate. Just like it was in the olden times, there were wheat kernels that were mixed up with the debris. It was considered a mixture. Only once it's a mixture is it considered that I'm actually accomplishing something by separating the debris from the good. However, if what I'm working with is not a mixture at all, then I don't even have to be careful, because it's not even a mixture. So what would be an example of this? Something that's not a mixture. Person has nice clear broth, beautiful chicken soup, all clear, and a piece of chicken in it. A large piece of chicken or a big potato. And now they have a question, well, I want to take it away, but I'm taking it away a long time before my meal. Is that okay? And the answer is, I only have to be careful if the chicken and the soup is considered a mixture. And you know what? This aspect, say the poskim, is not really considered a mixture. You would hardly say that the potato is mixed with the soup. The identity of the two types of food is so different, it wouldn't even be considered a mixture. And so, in such a case, you could take out the big pieces of chicken or potato from the soup, no problem. Another such case, on a hot summer day, a person serves fruit soup. The fruit soup is clear, a clear type of soup, but large pieces of fruit. Someone doesn't like the fruit, he just likes the soup. Can he take out the large piece of fruit from the soup? And the answer is, once again, yes. Not considered a mixture, because the large piece is so different than the soup. Wouldn't be considered mixed together from the beginning. Another very common example of this is when you pour soda with ice cubes. You're pouring soda with ice cubes, and maybe when I pour, I'm separating the soda from the ice cubes, but you know what? They were never really mixed. Say the poskim, an ice cube is so different in its essence than the water, it's not considered mixed. And so therefore, if it's not a mixture at all, we don't have any problem of separating the foods. That's even before we come to start. Now we're going to learn 3 ways, 3 options of how to deal with a mixture that a person can totally avoid the issue of the prohibited act of sorting foods on Shabbos. The first way is, I have a mixture of food. I don't want to, chas v'shalom, do anything prohibited. If I dissemble the entire mixture, it would be permissible. For example, I have a bowl of chocolates and candies. I only want to eat the chocolates, I don't want to eat the candies. Can't take the candies out of the bowl to eat the chocolates. But what I can do is, if I have a little room on the table, I could just spill them out of the bowl. I could spill them in a way that they scatter over the table, and now each one is individual. They're individual wrapped candies that are around. They're individual chocolates. Not considered a mixture anymore. Then I could just go back, take the same bowl, take the chocolates and put them in the bowl. No problem. So to scatter a mixture, disassemble the entire mixture, would be no problem. When is this very common? This is a very common word of advice that needs to be used when people are getting ready for a meal. They want to set the table. You want to set the table, but it's a long time before the meal. And as we learned, you're not allowed to do that too long before the meal. But if you're not separating a mixture at all, it would be okay. So here you go to the rack where you have the silverware that was cleaned from last night. Take it out, and it's a bunch of forks, spoons, knives. It's all mixed up. If you take one out of another, it would be considered separating. And that, of course, has to be done immediately prior to the meal, as we learned. However, if you have some room, so you can just put down the silverware in such a way where they scatter, they separate. Now each piece of silverware is found in a separate place. You've disassembled the mixture. It's not considered sorting anymore on Shabbos. So that's one word of advice, how to totally avoid the whole issue of separation on Shabbos. Scatter the mixture, and it wouldn't be a problem. The second type of situation where we can totally avoid the issue of sorting is if a person is just trying to get from the top to the bottom. What does that mean? He has a whole bowl of fruit. And the fruit is all types of mixed fruit. He would like an apple that's all the way on the bottom, a green apple. But there are all types of, there's oranges and tangerines and red apples on top, and he just wants to get to the bottom. Say the poskim, he's allowed to remove those foods from the top. If you remove food from the top of the mixture, it's not considered separating. The idea of separating is when everything's really mixed in and you pull something out of the mix. If you're just removing things from the top, that's considered siluk in halacha. It means you're just removing it in order to get to the bottom. That's really what you intend. You're not trying to make any type of separation. So that's totally permissible. Another type of situation that would be permissible is if you actually leave the mixture in its mixture form. So what does that mean? You have something that's mixed in, and you would like to separate what's not good, but you can't do it. You can't separate what's not good from good. If you leave it mixed and you take it away as a mixture, that is permissible. The example of this is a person has a beautiful plate of soup. He's a guest by someone on Shabbos, and he gets a beautiful plate of soup, but he looks down and he sees, wow, I guess they didn't notice. Something fell into the soup. There's something that shouldn't be there that's in the soup. It's not something that makes the soup unedible, but I just don't want it in my plate. So what can you do? If you take out the actual debris itself, would not be permissible. You're removing what you don't want from what you want. But here's what the poskim say. You could put in a spoon and take the unwanted particle together with a little soup. You take it totally out of the soup and you put it down, maybe on the bottom plate, on an area that you have near you, where the soup and the debris can still remain mixed. Totally permissible. Because it comes out that you did not remove anything from another. The soup around the debris is still mixed. You just remove the mixture together. Another example of this is with a tea bag. Obviously, tea can only be made on Shabbos in a way that's permissible. It shouldn't be considered cooking. But as we learned in regard to cooking, according to some authorities, a person can make tea in a third glass. So now comes the third glass, and a person puts in a tea bag, and all the tea spread in the cup. He doesn't want to leave in the tea bag because it's going to make the tea too strong. The usual way he would do during the week is just pull on the string. Pulls the string, pulls it up, but that would be removing what you don't want from what you do want. It's even considered with the utensil because you have the tea bag around. Once you lift the tea bag higher than the surface of the tea, what's going to happen is the tea leaves are being pulled away from all that tea juice that you do want. So, can't do that. But here's what you can do. Very simple. Just take a spoon and spoon out the tea bag together with some tea. It comes out that you never really separated the mixture. You're separating a part of the mixture from the rest of the mixture. That's permissible. Take out the tea bag with some tea and leave it in the spoon on the side. You could drink your tea. Gesundheit. So, these are certain rules and ways that a person can totally avoid the question of boyer on Shabbos. I think that we see, just by going over these, it's not really so difficult. It's not something that's so hard. It's just a matter of getting used to. It's a matter also of knowing what the rules are. Another couple of points that can help us very much in regard to separation. Another rule in terms of separation is that although you cannot take away what you don't want from what you want, but if you're doing it for a friend or someone else who has to eat right now, you are allowed to do it. So let's say if I have a bowl of cherries and blueberries, but I don't want the cherries. All I want is the blueberries. But I have a friend sitting next to me who wants the cherries. No problem. You can take the cherries out of the bowl, even though you don't want them, and have in mind you're giving them to your friend who will eat them right away. Same thing applies if a person has a pet. A person is required to give their pet to eat on Shabbos. You cannot give a stray animal outside of your home to eat, but you can give your animal to eat. If a person has an animal The animal likes the bones. You want to take the chicken bone out of the chicken, but usually, as we learned, you take the chicken away from the bone. In this case, if a person has such an animal at home, could take the bone out and give it right away to his animal for eating purposes. So if you do it for someone else who's about to eat it, that's also permissible. Another way that's permissible and is not considered a prohibited act is if the separation takes place while a person's actually eating, so to speak, in a person's mouth. So for example, let's say a person puts a piece of fish in their mouth, they find that there's a bone, and you want to take out the bone from the fish, that would be permissible if it's while it's in a person's mouth. Person eats watermelons, it has pits, that's a permissible type of boyer because in the form of eating. One last point is that if the separation has no importance whatsoever to anyone, it totally doesn't make a difference, it would not be considered a prohibited type of separation. So the example of this is many people have a custom of just washing foods. They buy fruits in the store, they just wash it off beforehand. You could technically eat the fruit without washing it. Just you want to be careful, so you go and you wash it beforehand. So that type of washing, that type of separation, doesn't make a difference to him. If it really doesn't make a difference, so not considered a problem. Sometimes a person has on the table a pitcher that filters water. He could very well drink the water without filtering. And so therefore, to use that pitcher would be permissible on Shabbos, because the separation makes no difference. By the way, if there is a person that it makes a difference for them, for example, someone who only drinks filtered water, then they would not be allowed to use the filter on Shabbos. But once again, if the separation makes no difference to you, it's permitted on Shabbos. A person finishes with all the food. They spill the used food down the drain. And a lot of times the drain itself separates. That separation doesn't make any difference, would not be considered any type of prohibited act. By knowing the laws of the prohibited acts properly, and by putting our mind to it, to fulfilling them precisely, we then have the opportunity to create a tremendous effect each and every Shabbos. In our homes, we're able to bring down God's presence through keeping the 39 prohibited activities. Especially when it comes to the kitchen. A lot of times it seems overwhelming. If we can get these rules straight, if we can just train ourselves what to do, we can have a Shabbos that's totally free of prohibitions and totally an experience of Gan Eden each and every Shabbos.